What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Thought I'd do this one live as we review the 1998 Mr. Olympia, one of the epic ones. There were many epic Mr. Olympia contests. This was one that was wide open because six-time consecutive champion Dorian Yates had announced his retirement right before this. So we knew ahead of time. There was no Dorian. Title was up for grabs. We had four guys heading into this who had all been runner-up at the Mr. Olympia. Shawn Ray had been a runner-up twice. Kevin Levrone had been runner-up twice. Nasser El Sonbatty had been runner-up the year before. Flex Wheeler had been runner-up in his Olympia debut back in '93. So there were four guys that we were really looking hard at for the win. Of course, none of them won. It was Ronnie Coleman, who had been ninth place the year before. But let's take a look at how the judging went. Let's look at the first call-out. Browser play the video clip. Oh, dang it. Okay, here we go. First call. So we got Ronnie and Flex. Ronnie in the middle. I like that little interaction there. Nasser El Sonbatty. Most people, a lot of people say that Nasser got screwed over and overlooked and rightfully deserved the 1997 win. Even though he was third place here, good amount of people thought he could have won this show. Looking at this lineup of three guys, our top three, you could make the argument, man. He looked phenomenal. Now, the back shots, when you'll see, Ronnie definitely had him in the back. I think even Flex had him in lower lats and overall back detail. But Nasser was a massive guy. Now, Ronnie claims he was not in the first call-out, so I guess this was not the actual first call-out. The video I was pulling this from, it was really hard to follow the timeline, so it wasn't necessarily the first call-out, but this was your top three. Now, interesting here, interesting thing you'll see, he's going to hitch up his trunks, basically make them a thong because his glutes are all the way in. Flex thinks about it and decides, nah, because Flex never had striated glutes. He was in excellent condition a few times, but he never had the striated glutes, which, as we know, became a hallmark of condition. And to the point where now, if you don't have shredded glutes, and it's been this way for a long time, you're not considered in shape. So the back shots, this is where Ronnie really just blew these two guys away. Nasser looks good when he's relaxed, when he's sort of getting into the pose. Once he hits the poses, you see his lower lats. You know what? His lat spread's pretty damn good. It's his rear double that he doesn't compare to the other two in. But Ronnie was just unstoppable this year. Nobody saw him coming. Like I said, he had been ninth place the year before, and he didn't have any weak body parts. Well, you could say his abs, maybe his calves weren't the greatest, but goodness gracious, the arms, the shoulders, the chest, the quads, the hams, that back. He was just a phenomenon. Let's take a look at another call-out, a group of call-outs. This is sort of a montage that I picked up. You can see some of the other guys here. Nasser here being compared with Kevin Levrone, who would end up taking fourth place. Shawn Ray, who would end up taking fifth. Look at that. I mean, Nasser's frontal bicep was just incredible. Shawn had beautiful shape and symmetry. Nasser, he was about 280 pounds on stage back then, under 6 foot. He was like 5'11". He was a massive guy with very good shape, great structure, wide shoulders, narrow hips. Of course, Kevin Levrone, one of the greats. Kevin would end up taking second place 4 different times over his career at the Mr. Olympia. Never got the title. Nasser, this was a good showing for him, but he had to settle for third. Here we see another call out. Who we got there? And Ronnie, they threw Ronnie out there again with Shawn and Kevin, which is unusual. In those days, it was very typical for the Mr. Olympia champ. The guy who was going to win would be called out once, and then they would just put him back in the lineup, and you wouldn't see him again until later on. Here we see Chris Cormier, who was 6th, Lee Priest, who was 7th, and that's Ernie Taylor on the left there, who was 8th. Ernie, a lot of controversy about those triceps. Many people believed he was one of the very first guys to employ site enhancement oil, synthol, whatever you call it, or just putting a lot of his regular gear in his triceps because they were ridiculous. So I don't know. He's never admitted to it, and I'm not one to cast aspersions. Cormier looked fantastic. Cormier had turned pro 4 years before. 92 USA was Flex. 93 USA winner was Cormier. Lee Priest, very solid Olympic competitor by this time too. Another comparison, we see Shawn in the middle with Flex and Kevin. Clearly, they were having a tough time, the judges, figuring out what was what, because these call-outs are all over the place. So that's how it went. So let's get into the posing routines, shall we? Let's do it. So let's start with Shawn Ray in 5th place. Shawn was the veteran by far at the Olympia. Oh, browser failed to play. Come on, do it. There we go. Okay, Shawn Ray. Yeah, Shawn this was his 10th Mr. Olympia contest. He had done it 88 the first year after he turned pro, at 13th. Didn't do it in 89. 1990, he was 3rd place. 91 in Orlando, 5th place. 92 in Helsinki, 4th place. 93, Atlanta, I believe it was it Chicago, 3rd place to Dorian. 94, he was second place again to Dorian. 95, 4th place. 96, 2nd place. And the year before in Long Beach, he had been 3rd place behind winner Dorian Yates and runner-up Nasser El Sonbatty. Shawn was known as one of the greatest posers, and I think you'll agree with me. Whether you love Shawn or don't like him for whatever reason, the guy was just a master professional in every sense of the word. Tan, condition, symmetry, proportion, shape. And he really did put a lot of time and effort into being a great poser, which we don't see a whole lot of these days. It also strikes me how there was no 202 division or 212 division as it later became back then. Shawn was probably about 205, 210 pounds at most, competing against guys like Nasser. Nasser was like 275 to 285 back in those days. Kevin was about 250. Flex, Ronnie up closer to 250. Plenty of top big dudes. Jean-Pierre Fuchs. He always held his own. He was never out of the top 5. I think he did 13 Mr. Olympia contests. Was never once out of the top 5. So Shawn deserves a lot of credit. He's outspoken. He speaks his mind. He was very critical of the judges. Very critical of the prize money, different things back in the day, and he got a lot of heat for it. And he didn't get a lot of support from his fellow athletes who were afraid to rock the boat. Kind of a similar situation with Lee Priest, who I interviewed a few weeks ago. Very outspoken as well. And nobody wanted to rock the boat. So that was Shawn Ray in 5th place. 4th place, now we're going to look at Kevin Levrone. Why is it not playing? I got to do it again. Kevin Levrone. Okay, here we go. Kevin, the Maryland Muscle Machine. So he had made his Mr. Olympia debut in 1992 in Helsinki, Finland, with 2nd place, runner-up to Dorian in Dorian's first win. Next year, he came back after a complete pec tear, same year, and got 5th place at the Olympia. 94, he had been 3rd place. 95, he was runner-up again. 96, 3rd place. And the year before in Long Beach, 4th place. So also a very, very solid and consistent threat to the Mr. Olympia title. A lot of people thought this could have been his year, just like they thought it could have been Flex's year or Nasser's year or Shawn's year. Certainly he looked fantastic. Some of the best shoulders, triceps, and chest we've ever seen in the sport. Very symmetrical. Also a great poser. And the odd thing about that is he's told me several times, he said in other interviews, he never once had a set routine going into a contest. He made every routine. What you're looking at here was improvised on the spot. He said he knew the song he was going to use. He would listen to the song multiple times and get a real feel for it. And then it would just flow. He just could instantaneously come up with the right poses, the right transitions. This is the pose that really put him ahead of other guys. I call it the Levrone because what do you call that pose? It's kind of like a side most muscular. It's a hybrid between a most muscular and a side chest. I don't know, but it looked fantastic. He did have just some of the greatest shoulders and triceps. I think triceps, the only guy that's rivaled him was probably Phil Heath. You guys can correct me because I'm sure I'm forgetting some tricep gods in that assessment of mine. So Kevin Levrone, to this day, I can never remember it. I've had him correct me so many times, and I still continue to screw it up. I don't. Is it Levrone or Levrone? Damn it. Kevin, my bad. My apologies, my brother. I forget. So that was Kevin. All right, let's go to the late Nasser El Sonbatty, who was 3rd place. Here we go. Okay, so Nasser, He had made his Mr. Olympia debut in 94 with a 7th place. 95, he was 3rd. 96, he was awarded 3rd place on stage, but later, because they had tested for diuretics and he failed, they took his 3rd place away and disqualified him. That was the year that they just tested for diuretics. 1990, they had tried steroid testing, which was another debacle. But 1996, a few guys failed. I remember Jay Cutler failed, and he threatened to sue them because they weren't following the exact IOC or WADA regulations as far as how the samples were collected and all that. He found some discrepancies in that, and Jay was able to scare them into leaving him alone. And I have no idea exactly what wasn't followed to the letter as far as how the samples were collected and the testing was done. I don't know, but Nasser lost his placing that year. He did not have a placing. However, the year before this in Long Beach, probably his best look ever, and a lot of people to this day still maintain that 1997 Nasser El Sonbatty was robbed of that Mr. Olympia title. It should have been his, rightfully, but unfortunately it was awarded to Dorian, who was clearly off. He had some bloating and distension in his abdominal area. His condition was not what we expected. He was competing with a tricep that was something like 80% detached. He was not the Dorian that had been so dominant for the few years leading up to that. So, you guys can argue that in the comments. I welcome arguments in the comments to help the algorithm. But still, Nasser El Sonbatty, the late Nasser El Sonbatty, I feel kind of bad that the current generation, a lot of them don't even know who he was. They look at the mass monsters that we have today, the big guys we have today, and they don't realize Nasser was bigger than most of them, and he would still hold his own today, for sure, with the current crop of guys. There's no doubt in my mind. He was pretty damn great. Rest in peace, Nasser. Okay, so that takes us to the heavy favorite, or one of the heavy favorites, Flex Wheeler, known as the Sultan of Symmetry. Wow. Okay, here we go. So Flex began his routine with his trademark split. Not too many guys could do that. He could do a full side split, not just the front to back, which, that's tough enough. But he did the side split. Yikes. One of the most beautiful physiques we've ever seen in bodybuilding in the many, many decades that the sport has existed. Condition was on point here. Sometimes Flex could come in at about 80 to 85% and still win shows, not the Olympia, based on everything else he had going for him, that amazing shape and symmetry, beautiful aesthetics. However, at this show, he did come in nice and peeled, although, the glutes were not. He never had really clear striated glutes. It just, I don't know genetically if it wasn't possible for him, because even at the 93 Arnold, where he was supposedly only 216 pounds, there were definitely the hints. There were some glute striations, but they weren't the deep, clear glute striations that we've come to expect from top guys at the Mr. Olympia level these days. But that's beside the point. Some people, a lot of fans out there, still consider Flex Wheeler to be the greatest physique that ever stood on a bodybuilding stage. And, guys can debate that all day. And I welcome the debates, please. I'm here for it. But boy, he was put together well. You can see in some poses, like the front lat, that he didn't really have that same wide clavicle structure that a few of the other guys like Nasser had, like Ronnie had, Kevin definitely had. He was a little bit narrow across the clavicles, kind of like Phil Heath later on, but built so much muscle mass on top of the clavicles, built his delts up so much that it almost became a moot point. Only people with a really astute eye for structure would be able to pick up on it. Most people would have no idea what the hell we're talking about when you say narrow shoulders. Shoulders are great to me. But Flex Wheeler, certainly fantastic here. Again, so many people going into the show predicted he was going to win. He was a heavy favorite. It was not meant to be. That was Flex. So now I did a video just yesterday on Ronnie, so seems like a Ronnie overkill, doesn't it? But he was a winner of this show. It was his first win. And this would set the stage for 8 years of Ronnie Coleman dominance. And he was dominant. Now, he was only about 245 pounds here. Same weight he was when he won the Arnold Classic in 2001. And if you ask a great deal of fans, and I've had so much feedback on my Facebook and Instagram based on the post that I made to promote the video, but unfortunately, people decide to comment on social media rather than watch the video and comment on YouTube, which I wish they would do. But a lot of them feel the best look Ronnie ever had was this, his first Olympia, and the 2001 Arnold Classic, where he was about the same weight, about 245. Really clear, crisp, deep muscle separation everywhere. Midsection was nice and tight. As he got very big and heavy, that midsection did start to bloat, did start to distend. You know, it's bound to happen when you put on 45 pounds, 50 pounds of muscle. He put on somewhere around 40 to 50 pounds of muscle over the course of his Mr. Olympia reign. And remember, he turned pro at only about 220. Ultimately hit a high point of 296. And I think when he went overseas that year, he was, probably spilled over a little. He was over 300 on stage, which we've seen Samson at 300 pounds this last Olympia, but different look. Ronnie had a totally different look than Samson. And, it's up for debate. I'd have to see a side-by-side comparison, which I bet the YouTube creator Superset Man has probably already done between Ronnie and Samson. I wonder how many poses Ronnie wins over Samson and vice versa. Samson's no slouch. He's very good. And it's tough. It's tough for me to be objective because I do look back with the eye of nostalgia. You see Ronnie did have gyno here. He got that taken out after this contest. You can see it there. It's a lot more evident when he puts his hands up for the ab shots. But Ronnie was a rightful winner here, and this began an 8-year reign, 8 consecutive Mr. Olympia wins, which Lee Haney had done before him, winning it from 1984 to 1991. Ronnie did it here from 1998 to 2005, and never again did we see that. Okay, so let's look at Ronnie winning if we can. Failed to play. Okay, so this is the moment of the announcement. It's dragged out quite a bit, as you can see. It took a while for them to announce Ronnie as the winner. And watch what happens when he's announced winner. Most of you already know. Most of you are familiar with what Ronnie usually did when he was announced winner. But this was probably the most dramatic example of Ronnie's reaction to being announced winner. Kaboom! Hits the dirt like he got shot. Now, Ronnie claims he doesn't remember anything from that moment. He just totally blanked out. I think Flex has said before what he whispered to Ronnie, but it was probably something just very encouraging, like, congrats, bro, you did it. Something like that. Ronnie, just a heap on the ground, 245-pound heap of muscle. You remember that phrase, ebony mountain of muscle? Yeah, I came up with that, and unfortunately, it was attributed to Hani Rambod because it was in his column, but I take full responsibility for that awful, awful phrase, ebony mountain of muscle. I was trying to be creative as a writer, and it didn't work well. So that was it. Flex gets his medal, his check. People are still trying to stir Ronnie from the ground back there. He's back there for a while. Yeah, Flex gracious in defeat because, he really wanted that win. And it's a shame Flex never won the Mr. Olympia. He certainly was good enough to be Mr. Olympia. So was Kevin. So was Shawn. So was Nasser. But only one man can win. There's no ties. And not everyone agrees with the decisions, especially when you have two guys who are fantastic and one wins and the other one doesn't. And they were both worthy of the win, but only one could get that nod from the judges in the first place. So you're left with a lot of butthurt people. All right, Ronnie, come on, get up, Ronnie. You can do this. He was just so stunned. He never thought he was going to be Mr. Olympia in his wildest dreams. So very, very emotional moment there for Ronnie Coleman. Looks like he's got his composure back. There's a late Joe Weider. It's his contest. Joe Weider's Mr. Olympia. All right, let's get to the phones. Kalyan. Yeah, this was all Kalyan's idea. Kalyan Krishna, thanks for the idea. I've been doing these contest reviews of Mr. Olympias. Eventually I'll run out because there's not, actually there's 60 Mr. Olympia contests. It would take me a while to go through all of them anyway, but I've got a few of them up here on the channel if you take a look. Ronnie pulled his posing tricks in and Flex's ultra shredded glute hamstring was game over. Flex is absolutely dumbfounded is the phrase. But yeah, I mean, condition-wise, that has become a hallmark, a metric of extreme condition when you have those glutes dialed in. And this footage didn't even do it justice. This was, to me, it looked like a VHS transfer that they were converted to whatever, digital. The footage we have now, guys, the HD and the 4K, it's so much more clear. You can see definition much, much better, which is one reason, if you're looking at footage from pro contests, the guys seem like they're in much better condition now just because we have better resolution. The cameras are better. We can see the definition better. Whereas, unfortunately, in the older stuff, it doesn't. It's not as evident. But yeah, Ronnie had him in condition. What a group. Yeah, Joe. I mean, us 90s guys sound like, wow, everything was better now. But I'll show you the top 10. I didn't put the whole top 10. So the top 10 at the show was Ronnie, Flex, Nasser, Kevin, Shawn. Chris Cormier in 6th. Chris was damn good himself. Chris has another record. He was runner-up, I believe, 6 times in a row at the Arnold Classic. Well, yikes. Lee Priest, Ernie Taylor, the late Mike Matarazzo, and Jean-Pierre Fuchs. It was a great lineup, absolutely. Yeah, go back to the cards. Let's go back. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I knew I was forgetting somebody who had awesome shots. Rolly Winkler's triceps are awesome. I wonder if he's going to, I think he's making a comeback. I heard he wants to make a comeback. I just saw on social media, Zach Kahn wants to do the Masters Olympia. How great would it be to see Zach Kahn up there again? Dillette, 4 weeks out from the show, he looked like he was going to play second. So Dillette was in this contest. However, he was not doing well during the judging. I don't have any footage of it, but Paul Dillette only made it about 10 minutes into the judging, and he couldn't breathe or something. He collapsed. He didn't collapse on stage like he'd done at the Arnold Classic a couple of years before that, but he couldn't continue on. He had to withdraw from competition. So, yeah, the way he was looking, Paul was a very consistent Mr. Olympia competitor himself, top 5 several times. So he probably, we don't know how well he would have done. I mean, we don't have footage of him in the judging. I wish they did. They edited him out of the footage that made it to air for TV because he didn't finish the contest. Nasser didn't start messing up his own results. Oh, so this was 98. Yeah, Nasser started going a little crazy with the SEOs and the shoulders and his arms after this. I think at one show, correct me, that he had some oil actually leaking out of one of his delts, out of like one of the injection sites at the show. Am I right? I know that's happened to other people, but I think it happened to Nasser too. Mike Cox, Big Mike Cox says, I'll say this till the day I die. If Flex looked like he did it to 98 Arnold, he would have won the show. Yeah, Flex was one of those guys who tended to look better in the spring shows. He won the Arnold Classic, is it 4 times? And Dexter won it 5 times, yeah. So he brought a crazy look to the Arnold many times, and he won it 4 times. But the only year he was able to bring almost the same condition was 93, his debut, his rookie year, when he won the Arnold Classic. He won the Pro Ironman. A week later, he goes and wins the Arnold Classic, and that's early March. 6-7 months later, he goes into the Olympia and gets second place, still looking pretty damn good, but not quite as good as he had at the Arnold, where people were just in awe. But yeah, Flex was one of those guys that didn't seem to be able to peak well twice in one year. That was Ronnie too, because if you remember the year Ronnie won the Arnold, the only year that he competed in the Arnold, 2001, he was way off at the Olympia at the judging 2001. And Jay Cutler was beating him after the judging. He was ahead in points. Ronnie was holding all kinds of water. Chad gave him something, which was probably a very strong diuretic. Had him drink a gallon of water, first of all, because he felt like he was going to die. Ronnie showed up the next day looking better and got the title from Jay. But Ronnie never again after that did anything but the Olympia. He felt genuinely that he was not capable. His body wasn't capable of peaking twice in one year. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was all in his head. Who knows? We'll never know. But yeah, Flex typically looked better in the spring shows. 97 Nasser won, period. If judging was like it was now, Dorian would have lost 94, 97. Yeah. In the old days, back in the day, if you had the Mr. Olympia title, there was this idea that you had to knock the champ out, meaning even if you deserved to beat him just by a little bit, you weren't going to beat him. You had to really kick his ass, dominate him, the current Mr. Olympia champion, to beat him. That's how it was back in the day. You see, it's not like that now. If a Mr. Olympia comes in even a tiny, tiny bit off and someone else is better, they beat him. That's why we've seen 7 Mr. Olympia winners in the past 6 years. Phil Heath, 2017. 2018, the late Sean Roden. 2019, Brandon Curry. 20 and 21, Big Ramy. 22, Hadi Chupan. 23, Derek Lunsford. And 24, Samson Dauda. That's 8. How many fingers do I got? I got 8 fingers up. So it was 6 winners in 8 years. Okay, 6 winners in 8 years. I stand corrected. But at least, thank God, I can count on my fingers like a true knucklehead. Mike continues. Ronnie was losing after judging. Yeah, I'd have to see the scorecards for this, but I believe you're right. It was close. It wasn't like Ronnie blew him out of the water. I think you're right. I think Flex was ahead of him after the judging on the scorecards. But then you had the posing round, which they judged, and the pose down round, which they judged. They didn't have a confirmation round back then. They did have other rounds. They had a symmetry round that we don't have anymore. And then it was a muscular. So symmetry round was the quarter turns. They gave them a score based on that. There was a muscularity round, which was the mandatory poses, front double, rear double, front lat, all that. Then they had the posing round, which was their posing routine. And then they had the pose down round, which was just a pose down. And I feel like that was just a round where they could sort of manipulate the scores. If somebody was a little bit behind and they wanted them ahead, there was all kinds of fuckery going on back then with the judging. Mike says, when I walked in the way at the 98 USA, Flex was sitting and talking to Chad. His arms looked cartoonish. Yeah. Flex had some monstrous arms, man. So Ronnie's arms, when Ronnie was off season, I've told this story before, but please indulge me again. 2002, I was at a nightclub in Boston called the Rock Seats, where all the meatheads used to go, and we'd roll on our ecstasy. And I wasn't into GHB and stuff, but most of the guys were. Everybody was on drugs, put it that way. Dance music. 2002. So this was April. I'm coming out of the bathroom, and I see on the edge of the doorway this massive tricep. I'm like, and I said to myself, who the hell is that? Ronnie Coleman? And it was Ronnie Coleman in Boston. He was there for an appearance at a nutrition store the next day. And I talked to him for a minute, but sure enough, I thought that was funny that I said, who's that, Ronnie Coleman? And, didn't know Ronnie was in town in Boston. Mike says, nobody thought Ronnie would win. Called 1-900 pump iron. They sang the place, and they told Ronnie, I was like, what the F, Ronnie? Yeah, 1-900 pump iron. Was I still working for the company at this time? I think I had just been fired or quit. To this day, we argue about whether I quit or was fired. But anyway, that was a line that you could call, and it was like 99 cents a minute. And you could get contest results, contest schedules, gossip, all kinds of shit. Because we didn't have an internet, remember. The internet was just starting in 1998. There was still nothing where you could instantly look up contest results or anything like that. So how long they hold their poses. Yeah, I mean, the posing was just, I think I'm going to put up some judging. Put up the judging stuff again while we're talking. Yeah. They were just better. Look at that. That's hilarious how Nasser and Ronnie had that little exchange there. Look like they're barking at each other. Yeah, so let's look at how long they hold this front double. 1,000. Nasser's the first in the pose. 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000, 6. Well, I mean, the holding, you were talking about in the routine, because obviously in the judging, they're going to hold the poses until the judge tells them the next one. But in the posing round, in their posing routines, they did hold their poses longer. You're right. Ronnie was phenomenal 98, so the good taper and his conditioning was all-time best. Yes, Joseph, what's up, man? I totally agree. Yeah. I was a fan of all the different versions of Ronnie, but the lighter version with the crazy condition and the tighter waistline, I prefer that. Most people seem to prefer that. Some people still appreciate, of course, the freaky look he had in 03 and 04, where he was 287 and 296 pounds, respectively. But here he was just in crazy condition. 6 months prior to the show, holding suit, Flex looked a god in Columbus back in third. Yeah. A lot of people will say that was one of their favorite, if not their favorite Flex look. The 98 Arnold win, 5 years after his first win. Condition wasn't that far off, but he was much bigger, fuller, rounder. Totally different. That was Diana Dennis on stage. You know what's funny, Mike? I thought that was Kathy Lefrancois there for a second. Let me go back to that. The win. Ronnie wins. You'll have to wait for him to win to see her on stage. She was Diana Dennis. We'll see her in a second. Was one of the, a great female bodybuilder of the late 80s and into the early mid 90s, and then she retired. She was known for being an amazing poser, and I think when they had mixed pairs bodybuilding, she paired up with this guy Kevin. I can't remember his name, Kevin something or other, and they won many pro shows. The ones that had a mixed pairs category, and they did have a mixed pairs like world championships and pro show and all that stuff. Yeah, there's Flex congratulating Ronnie. Ronnie just a heap on the ground. Can't believe he won. My goodness. Yeah. So Mike and I are both big fans of female body. We both find them very, very attractive. I can't remember what this guy's name was. These people presenting the ribbons and trophies and supplement company owners and stuff. There's Diana Dennis right there in the dress. She does bear a resemblance to Cathy Lefrancois, the pro from Montreal. Oh, there's Lee Haney. Lee Haney in a tux. Look at that. 8-time Mr. Olympia. I didn't realize he was presenting trophies to that show. I think that other guy on the right was Eric Weider, the son of Ben Weider, I think. It's hard to say. Flex isn't saying that Arnold. And Flex looked like he did 98 Arnold. He might have won. Yeah, I mean, considering it was as close as it was, and Flex was a little bit off the way he had looked 6-7 months earlier in Columbus. Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, things could have gone his way. You know, I'm not saying I wanted Flex to win over Ronnie, but I knew Flex. I had known him for years. We worked together on videos. I mean, I directed one of his training videos, Mass Construction. Shot with him many times for the American Muscle Show. I knew him, so I was sort of rooting for him. I didn't know Ronnie. I'd met Ronnie, and I'd shot once with Ronnie and interviewed him, but I knew Flex much, much better than I knew Ronnie, and I was really, really rooting for him to win. Chris could have placed ahead of Shawn at this. Yeah, a lot of times, Mike's right, but a lot of times when you get to like 5th and 6th place, 7th place, you could sort of swap those placings around, and nobody would really be that upset, and you wouldn't really necessarily be wrong either, because sometimes one guy has better this or that than the other. They sort of cancel each other. Like, say one guy has a great back, but his legs are weak, and the other guy has awesome legs and his back is a little weak. I mean, how do you decide which flaw is worse? But these guys are all so amazing. It's so the competition is so close. I think being a judge at the Olympia level must be one of the most stressful things. Ernie Taylor, Mr. Oil. Well, he never admitted to it. Nasser was leaking from the rear delts. There you go. Yeah. I should find that footage sometime. Yeah. Imagine that. You're on stage and stuff's actually leaking out of your muscles. Yikes. How embarrassing. Mark with a great photo of Flex Wheeler in his avatar. Barely anyone with stride shoulders, always big and round with no lines. I hate that look. Yeah. Why is that? A couple things, I think. I think a lot of guys are just pinning a ton of gear in there. A lot of them are putting their SEOs in there too, the synthol type substances. I think the use of insulin, which a lot of guys rely on to add muscle mass in conjunction with steroids and the growth hormone. I think it becomes harder for them to show real crisp, clean muscle detail. The muscle takes on a puffier, what GH15 used to call bloofy look. It's just not impressive. I mean, I would rather see shoulders are a little bit smaller and not quite as round, but crazy striations, what my good friend Giles Tiger Thomas calls stripy delts. I want to see all those striations in the shoulders. Chris been more regimented and dedicated, would have placed ahead of Shawn. Yeah, I mean, Chris was known to party a lot. You know, I'm not hating on him because I did my share of partying myself. So I get it. But yeah, had he been more of a monk and just lived, breathed bodybuilding 24/7, the way Dorian did during his competitive years, could Chris have done better, had a better career than he did? I think he would have won a couple of Arnolds for sure. Considering he was runner-up at the Arnold 6 times in a row, would he have been Mr. Olympia? I don't know. Who knows? I mean, look at these great names we just rolled through. Kevin never won Olympia. Shawn never won. Flex never won. Nasser never won. They were all worthy of a Mr. Olympia title. Bloofy delts now. No stripes, just bags of oil. Oil is loyal. Is that what Louis Marco says? Ronnie was capable of peaking multiple times. Ronnie 1988 PBR overnight champion. Yeah. That's true. 1998, I think, was his first year competing with Chad Nichols as his coach. Chad was, the go-to coach. He was the man back in that time. That's who they all wanted to work with. He was also Flex Wheeler's coach, among other people. And yeah, Ronnie peaked that year. You're right. He blew away the Night of Champions in the Olympia and then the post-Olympia shows. I think he won a few of those too. Whatever ones he entered, I'm sure he won. Jay Cutler was ahead of Ronnie by 6 points as Latimer. So we're talking about the 2001 Olympia now, where Jay was ahead of Ronnie after judging. Yeah, Chad made sure Ronnie would show up the finals a much better version with pre-judging. Yeah, it was a 2-day show, 2-day format. So, from what I recall, Ronnie felt awful. He had a terrible time in prep for that show. His body just wasn't responding. He wanted to quit after, I think he wanted to quit before the judging. Yes, he wanted to go to the hospital that morning. I remember now. Ronnie wanted to go to the hospital. He called Chad's room in the hotel. They're at the same hotel. Said, I got to go to the hospital. I'm not feeling good. So Chad did the unthinkable, which say, I want you to drink a gallon of water and just lay down for a while and then tell you how I feel. So Ronnie drank a full gallon of water. Remember, it was customary, and still is customary for guys to dehydrate at the very end to get rid of that last bit of subcutaneous water. They're also using diuretics. So Ronnie did it, and he was able to feel good enough to get to prejudging, but he was spilled over. All that water, when you're that dehydrated and you drink all that water at once, of course you're going to look a little bloated, a little watery. So after that, Chad gave him something which was most likely, Ronnie still to this day doesn't know exactly what it was. It was something he had to drink. It wasn't an injection. It wasn't a pill. He remembers it was a liquid. Chad said, drink this, and Ronnie trusted his coach. He drank it, and he sharpened up enough so that the next day the judges felt justified in giving him the title. Mark says, I believe there's peaking and peaking. Sam's new muscle shows because he's never peeled. Ronnie at the Arnold was skinless, peeled. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that to say, when you phrase it that way, it makes it sound like, and this may be the case and it may not, I don't know, as if Samson doesn't come in as shredded as he probably could. Like he's holding back a little bit on condition. Could Samson push harder and come in a little bit more peeled? Maybe sacrifice some of the size and fullness? I don't know. I don't know if the Samson that we've been seeing the past few shows that won the Mr. Olympia, declared the greatest bodybuilder in the world, I don't know if that's the best condition he's capable of, or if he could push it a little further, it probably would have to sacrifice a little bit of fullness, a little bit of size to get that extra level of condition. I don't know. I'm not his coach. His wife is his coach. What do I know? But Michael M., I was there. I envy you. This is one of the ones I missed. Flex lost because his hamstrings, glutes are not in condition like Ronnie's. Yeah. Let's go back to that judging. If we can show the first call up. Yeah, we saw that Ronnie made a point of, in the rear double, he emphasized his superior glute conditioning in particular by hiking up his trunks, which Flex, you saw Flex, he played with his trunks like he was going to do it, but then he didn't do it because he knew his glutes were not striated. So pulling them up would have just looked foolish because he just had buttery soft glutes compared to Ronnie's, which were clearly carved out and striated. Yeah. Banners, comments. Wish kids were able to see Jews in person was insanity. Seeing a club was crazy. Yeah. I said, when I saw Ronnie, he was full off season. It was April. He was probably about 320 pounds, 315, 320. Yeah, this is the moment in the judging we were just referring to, where Ronnie pulls the trunks up his ass crack, turning them into a thong, basically, which later on trunks would get even smaller. Guys would show up with trunks that were almost like that in the first place. And Flex decided not to. You can see Flex does have the hints of striations. He's got a little bit of striations going on, but they weren't like Ronnie. Ronnie just was able to get front to back, top to bottom peeled. Thank you, Mike. It was Diane Dennis, Kevin Lawrence. I should remember that because I used to buy some. I remember the first time I shopped in a supplement store when I was a freshman in college out in Santa Barbara, California. I bought some vitamin pack, Great Earth vitamins or something. It had Diana and Kevin were on the box. I think I bought it because of them. It's like, oh, they look great. I should buy this. Maybe I could look like as muscular as these two. Mike says, I thought Cormier should have won at least 2 to 3 Arnolds. The year Jay came in small and shredded. The first year Dex won, I could have had Chris in 2000. Yeah, Cormier, people can criticize his work ethic and this and that, but when you have all those runner-up finishes the way he did, 6 in a row with the Arnold, it's highly likely that at least one of those he could have won. It was just like a flip of a coin. That's how it comes down sometimes. Sometimes two guys, they're apples and oranges. They're two different physiques. They're both in great condition. They both have no weak points. They just have different looks. One might be bigger, one might be smaller, one might have better shape and proportions. So what do? The judges have to go with somebody. And unfortunately for Chris, he was always on the losing end of that decision, unfortunately. Mark says, like Chris Cormier's more had a better arms, short torso. Oh, you would have liked Cormier's physique if he had better arms and shorter torso. Well, his arms weren't bad at all. Long torso, I thought structurally he was pretty good. Let's go to that second call out with him. You won't see him for a second here. He'll show up soon. Yeah, I thought Cormier actually one of the best structures I'd ever seen. Oof. Canadian Giant Greg Kovacs. It's with a K, not a C, just so you guys know. Oil Simon stiffly got his shoulder backstage 2000. Greg was awful. His physique as a pro, it was one of the worst physiques to ever step on a pro stage. I'm not disparaging the person he was. I'm disparaging the physique. He was a big, bloated. He was just a big guy, like some strongman with like a 60-inch waist. If you dieted him down, that's what he would look like. He had a lot of muscle mass, but he had an awful structure, really wide, thick waist and midsection. It just wasn't pretty. It was not pretty. And he was putting a ton of stuff in his arms. Just his arms, I think he measured them at like 26 inches, and probably a good 2 inches that was oil. Right, was the second or third call. Yeah, he says third, Mike. I don't think it was third. There's Cormier in the middle. Look at that structure. I think he's got a beautiful structure. Let's see if he hits a double by. I'll critique his arms right now, live with you guys. Obviously, Lee Priest has incredible arms. I don't know. His arms look pretty good to me. They look pretty good to me. Cormier didn't really have any weak points. He was very good. He was in an era where there were just so many excellent guys. It was hard to stand out. It was hard to win. He did win some shows. And believe me, he was up against some very, very tough competition. Nasser looks to be in crazy condition, that 98 Olympia footage. Yeah. Yeah, Nasser nailed it a few times. For sure. Ronnie also won Night Champions same year. Yeah, that's right. Night Champions was usually in May. We'll put Nasser up. And the Olympia was either September, October. It sort of jumped around all over the place. Comments. Ronnie started with Chad. Yeah, that was their first show together. The 98 Night Champions, Chad and Ronnie. Big size Jamosi? What's that mean? I don't know what that means. Yeah, Nasser, the late Nasser El Sonbatty, has a lot of fans even today. And I wish more of the current generation, the younger generation, knew about Nasser and appreciated how good he was in the 90s. He was definitely worthy of being Mr. Olympia. Unfortunately for him, he just had to beat Dorian Yates, which was almost impossible. Wasn't able to do that. And then it was Ronnie after that, which Ronnie was unbeatable for a string of years there too. Chad had a lot of clients. Well, yeah, because there weren't a lot of coaches to choose from back then, remember? There weren't. I think it was Joe McNeil starting to work with people. Late 90s, Chris Aceto was a coach. But all these guys that you know about now, they weren't coaching yet. Farah, Hani, Stefan Kinzel was probably in high school back then. I don't know, So Chad had to take on a ton of people. Nasser Demila's pro call. Yeah, I remember, if you look at Nasser's early pro footage, he was nowhere near the size that we're looking at right here. This was a much, much larger version than he started out at. And he was able to hold his symmetry pretty well. His waistline didn't really get that big. Yeah, it was not the smallest midsection, but it wasn't like a big blown out midsection. Top three finishers for Chad's athletes. Okay, so yeah, the top three guys here were Ronnie, Flex, and Nasser. So Chad had them all. Yeah, I mean, I think Chad, in our interview, I can't remember the figure. You might remember, Kellyanne. I think he said 1 year he had 6 or 7 out of the top 10 in the Olympia. 1 year he did, which is crazy when you think about it. Tells you how fantastic he was as a coach. I don't know how long I've been talking, almost 45 minutes. Wish we had more footage of the Grand Prix shows. Yeah. I mean, some of those Grand Prix shows, you see where they were held. There were these, like in a barn or something. Some of them were in the most awful locations. Like Levrone said one was in a slaughterhouse or something. I mean, some of the locations were good. They were legit venues, theaters and stuff, and some of them were not. It was luck of the draw, or whoever these promoters were. There was some shady business going on back then. But yeah, there's barely any footage. If there's footage, sometimes it's like shaky Super 8 film footage that someone transferred to video and then digitized so we could look at it on YouTube, and it's awful. Like the 1980 Mr. Olympia, we never got to see. I know there's a documentary called The Comeback that has good footage, but if you look on YouTube, most of the footage from the 80 Olympia in Sydney, where Arnold came back and won the 7th title, it's awful. It's like this shaky, handheld, grainy film stuff that's just looks awful. Vividly remember one Olympia chats were 9-10 athletes. Yeah, I think he actually had most of the top 10 in one of the Olympias, which we wouldn't see that now. There's so many coaches to choose from. Although I don't know, it seems to me like Stefan Kienzel, boss of Outlaws, snapping up a lot of people lately. So he might be the next guy to have, most of the top 10 in the Olympia lineup as his clients. We might see that. Anyway, I think I'm going to take off, guys. We've been talking for over 45 minutes. So appreciate you all watching. Please, if you like the channel, subscribe if you're not already. Give the video a thumbs up. Click on that like button. Share it. Help me out. Trying to grow the channel. Trying to do my best here. Appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you, Big Mike Cox. Thanks to everyone else who joined me on the live. And have an awesome weekend. We'll see you next time. Peace.